back to the Biblically Inspired Life. I hope you enjoyed seeing some of the beautiful flowers that are in bloom in Israel already this year. It looks like it might be an early spring. There has been a lack of rain, so we do continue to pray for rain during this time. And the Kinneret, that is the Sea of Galilee, is at a low. So we do ask for prayer for rain in Israel during this time of year. And then I also showed you just a brief snippet of some of the Purim costumes that are available at one of the stores all over Israel. Out on the sidewalks, you'll see racks of costumes for the children and adults, and it's a very festive time. So I wanted to just share a few thoughts about Purim and a few things that we can glean from it. Now, if you don't know the story of the events that took place, you can go to the Book of Esther and read those for yourself. So today is just pulling out a few points about the events and how we can apply them or recognize some of these things in our lives. The first thing we see is Haman and how he is just consumed with pride. And a lot of these events start to take place because Haman is very prideful and he's upset because everyone bows down to him as they go by, except for Mordecai, the Jew, as he is called. So Mordecai says, the only one I bow down to is God. And so this angered Haman, and this got a lot of the ball rolling. So one of the things that we have to see is that pride brings about eventually destruction. It says in the Bible, pride comes before destruction. And it also is just a very poisonous attribute to have. The next thing we see is that there is this decree that Haman kind of tricks the king, so to speak, into making, in which all of the Jews throughout the kingdom, which is huge, they're going to be able to be killed. And we see from this that even today, over and over, we see this throughout history, don't we? That there is a satanic, supernaturally evil intent to kill the Jewish people. So this is an ongoing theme, not only in biblical times, but even currently. And it just made me think about the events going on even today here in Israel, and really the rise in anti-Semitism around the world, and how that is a huge problem, and it is a supernatural, satanic hatred. Thirdly, we see that Esther's response to this situation was to call for a 3-day fast. Not only was she fasting, but she was calling for all the Jewish people throughout the kingdom to fast for 3 days. And so we see that the initial response to hatred, to problems, to problems in our lives is to fast and pray. We know in the Bible, fasting and praying always go together. And so we just need to always check ourselves. And when we encounter opposition or evil, what is our initial response? Is it a fighting? Is it an anger? Is it a withdrawal and fear? Or do we fast and pray? So this is something that we should instill in our own lives, that as we encounter various things, that we turn to the Lord, that we fast and pray about various situations. The next thing is just God's providence and how he wasn't allowing the king to sleep. And the king said, bring me some, the books of the Chronicles and read to me. And that was when he found out that Mordecai had saved his life and that nothing had been done for him as a reward. And so then that brought about the next situation where Haman was just infuriated that Mordecai was going to get honor in place of him. And Mordecai had built a gallows that he was going to manipulate and have Mordecai hung upon. But in the end, Haman was brought low. In other words, he had his pride, he had his time of pride, and then came destruction. So he was brought low. God is a just God. The punishment and his vengeance is not always in this lifetime, but eventually all sin will be punished. And so we want to remember that as we celebrate this holiday, and just remember that God is in control, God is just, and he will take care of the situation. Finally, I wanted to just touch on, at the end of Esther, you read in the second half of chapter 9, how this holiday then was celebrated, how it came about. It says here that the Jewish people, the leaders, Mordecai actually sent letters to establish among them that they should celebrate yearly the 14th and 15th day of the month. So let me give you a little timeline here. The 13th day of Adar is Ta'anit Esther, which is the fast of Esther. The 14th day of Adar is Purim, and then there's an extra day of Purim. There's a celebration of Purim on the 15th day of Adar, and that is for the walled cities. And then we see, how did they celebrate this? First, it was a time that they turned sorrow into joy and mourning into gladness. But it says that there were days of feasting and joy, of sending presents to one another and gifts to the poor. So the sending of food, of gifts, is called mishloach manot, and it's very common to buy a bunch of empty baskets. You put together some different food items and you share those with various people. So when you're in a really tight community, especially like we used to live in up in the north of the country, each family was getting, 5, 10 different baskets delivered, and the children were having a great time putting together the baskets to share with neighbors and friends. So it's a very joyous time. The children, especially the children, dress up in costumes. Of course, Queen Esther is the #1 costume for girls, and Mordecai is the #1 for the boys. And there's always the reading of the Megillah. Perhaps you know there are a few different books of the Bible, which are Megillahs, and Megillot Esther is one of those. So you go to the synagogue or you gather together and you read this whole book of Esther. And whenever the name Haman is mentioned, there's a lot of booing. There's these noisemakers called groggers that you spin around and make noise whenever his name is mentioned. So it's a really fun time to gather in the synagogue. I remember one time I went with some neighbors to a synagogue. It was very small. This was up in the north, and it was packed with people and overflowing. And when the children and everyone was saying boo and making the noises when Haman's name was mentioned, it was just a really fun and exciting time. So I hope that you will take this opportunity to study the Book of Esther, glean some life lessons and some wisdom from that we can apply to our lives, and then celebrate the holiday. And finally, I would like to share with you a short cooking video, which is coming right after this. So stay tuned. Purim Sameach, and I look forward to doing the next video with you. Welcome to the cooking portion of the Biblically Inspired Life. We just heard about Purim, and one of the aspects of Purim was the 3 days of fasting that Esther called upon all of the Jewish people to observe. And in remembrance of that, even today, we have a day of fasting the day before Purim. So Purim is on the 14th day of Adar, and so the fast day is the 13th day. And it begins at dawn and it ends at dusk, at sundown. One of the things we like to do at the end of a fast is to promote drinking of fluids. And so a lot of times we'll have salty foods, spicy foods, things like that are very traditional within Judaism to eat at the end of a fast. So today we're going to make a salmon dish. It's supposed to be a little bit spicier, but unfortunately the ingredients that I could find here in Israel had more of a sweetness to them. But we're going to go with this and see how it turns out. I think it'll be really good. It's an Asian recipe. So in my bowl here, I have 1 tablespoon of sugar. And to that, I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of this chili sauce, which you can find in the Asian section of your grocery store, I'm sure. Then we're going to have 2 teaspoons of soy sauce and 1 teaspoon of vinegar. So here I'm adding the 2 teaspoons of soy sauce. Go over just a little bit because it doesn't all come out of the spoon very well. And we're going to have 1 teaspoon of vinegar. So I'm going to put this all together and I'm going to stir it up into a glaze. Now I've preheated the oven onto a broiling, and so it should be ready in a minute. So we're going to add this glaze over the top of the salmon. I'm just doing 2 slices because 2 pieces of salmon because Baruch and I are empty nesters now. Yay. And let's put this on generously. I want to be careful though because this doesn't have sides on it. It's on a parchment paper, but it doesn't have any sides. And the other day I was roasting some vegetables and the olive oil went over the side, and boy did that smoke up the house. So you want to be careful, maybe even put an aluminum foil under this or something. So I'm saving a little bit of the glaze for the end, and I think I am going to go ahead and roll up this parchment paper a little bit on the sides. What I like about this recipe is it's only 4 ingredients except for the salmon, and I'm one who doesn't like to have a whole bunch of different ingredients that I'm going to use one time and then they're sitting around and it's just a waste of money. So as you can see, hopefully, I have folded up the sides of this parchment paper a little bit so that it will keep in the sauce if the sauce were to spread out. And I'm going to put this in the oven, in the broiler, and we will see how it turns out. I'll come back and give you a serving suggestion. Well, the results are in. This was a simple recipe. As I said, 4 ingredients plus the salmon, of course. And I think it looks great. I've tasted it. It tastes wonderful. And I just added a few sesame seeds on top for garnish. You could also add some cilantro or something like that. I'm serving it with rice. You could also make some mixed vegetables, roasted vegetables, something like that. But anyway, I want to say Purim Sameach to you, and may you have a blessed holiday. Shalom.